What's up, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting with the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. We got Steve on the line today. How you doing today?
Hey, what's up, man? Happy to be here.
Cool. So we're going to rewind a little bit, but wanted to get Steve on the podcast. It just fresh off his first elite total, did really well. Hit a big PR, went 8 for 9 his last meet. So we want to kind of recap his lifting journey a little bit and just maybe just kick things off, but like how you got started with lifting and I guess what first brought you into powerlifting.
So lifting was one of those things that I did off and on my whole life. I was never really fully consistent with it throughout my 20s. I'll go through party phases, then I will lift again, gain some weight back, muscle mass back, go through another party phase off and on. 2015, I kind of hit a rock bottom living in upstate New York. My bank account was in the red. I was really scrawny too. I was like 120, 125 pounds, maybe 130 at my best. Moved back to Long Island, and I was like, no, that's enough is enough. And that's when I got the most consistent. Started off with the bodybuilding style training, trying to eat as much as I can to bulk up as much as I can. Got up to, I want to say like 155, 160 range. Kind of fell off again for another year, but then after that year, that's when my mother passed. And I remember one of her last words, like her last conversation with my brother and my stepfather and I. She was losing her mind. She had this very rare disease called Crutchfield-Jacobs disease, CJD. And only 1 in a million people get this. It's a prion protein form of dementia. So it's not genetic, but it could be infected through surgical equipment. So she probably got it from like one of the surgeries she got in the past, unfortunately. So she was losing her mind. So her last like conversation with us, she was telling us to stay strong no matter what you do. Just keep staying strong emotionally, physically, do what you got to do to stay on top of your game, basically. The next day after that, she was completely gone, speaking nothing but Spanish. And that kind of hit me. That stuck with me. I wanted to do that. Like, I know she meant mostly like mentally stay strong, emotionally stay strong, but physically is a big part of that as well, because if you could make yourself physically strong, that could bleed over into real life as well. So that's when powerlifting came in. I was always into like these videos on YouTube, Instagram, watching powerlifters doing their thing. And I was like, you know what? Let me try this out. So I started buying a lot of equipment to put in my basement. And now this is around COVID era too. So the gyms were closed. So I had no choice but to buy this equipment. Started training in my basement and eventually found your gym too. And it's actually a cool story how I found your gym as well. I'll probably get into it in a little bit. But it started from there, gained the weight that I have right now, which is about like 170 pounds just from bulking and the consistency and the programming, which was much better than what I was doing in the basement, by the way. I was probably training a little bit too hard, too heavy, way too often. But over here, it's a lot better. The program just works. It definitely works.
So a couple of things I want to highlight it too, because I think it's important for people to hear, because I think sometimes people may not understand like all the benefits of lifting in terms of like having a positive outlet, gaining some control. It seemed like were like not in like and I kind of put myself in this category too, like kind of growing up when I found, my thing was like wrestling. And I was kind of like a really big kid. Like when I was a ninth grader, I was heavier, than I am now. And, I was a fat kid growing up and, lifting and training for wrestling. And I felt like a sense of control. So I think that can be like really helpful for a lot of people, is that you're kind of doing this thing and you're kind of seeing like progress and, you put effort in and you see more weight on the bar. And I think that can really help mentally. So I guess like when you started like lifting, when did you like first see like, I guess, some of those benefits, and like when did you really kind of feel like you wanted to take things to the next level and eventually like, eventually kind of sort out like, I want to maybe try competing, or I want to like maybe like actually try to like go outside of my home gym? And what was that like for you?
So it was a little bit before I actually found your gym. I was kind of like trying to self-coach myself, seeing a lot of progress, but I was hitting some plateaus because, like I said, I was going heavy way too often. Probably I was doing 5x5s and getting stuck at a like specific weight. Like I was doing 335 deadlifts for 5x5s, and I just couldn't progress from there. So I was trying to figure out ways to blow past that, because I did want to compete eventually. I was on I was on an Instagram live with Powerlifting America, and ABN Bull was on there, and I was just asking questions. And I remember asking him a question about chain work. I was like, "Should I buy chains for the gym in my basement?" And then he gave me information about your gym, and I didn't know he didn't know I'm in New York. I didn't know you were in New York either. So I'm looking it up. I think I messaged you about it and asked you, and then you sent me a whole lot of information, and then you even showed me where your gym is. I was like, "Wait, that's in Farmingdale. It's like 20 minutes away from me. I could join this gym. This is perfect." So then we set up a consultation, and I think after like my first couple weeks here, I hit a couple PRs just from the energy, the atmosphere. I was just
Yeah.
feeling good, like being in this environment. And that's when I knew I was like, okay, I really want to start competing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people too, like I think nowadays, there's a couple of like pros and cons of, I kind of joke like I started powerlifting before it was cool and all this stuff, but there's a lot more opportunities, a lot more places to train that have the right equipment, that have the type of stuff that we have. But not every place maybe has like a team environment. So maybe if you could kind of speak to like what was some of the differences of training in your basement versus training in a group for like the first time, and what has that been like for you?
Training in a group is it's so much better. You have people out there supporting you and they want you to succeed. And you say it best, iron sharpens iron. So you're training with people who have done it. They've done the grunt work and you can learn something from them as well. And maybe they could even learn something from you too. So it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, and you get a lot out of that. And just going into a top set too, when you're by yourself, you have to hype yourself up, and you could do it. It's possible, but it helps so much more when you have other people out there cheering you on and wanting you to succeed as well. Makes a big difference. Like I like to joke around and say that yelling adds 10% strength, kind of like a video game RPG kind of thing, but it's so true. Like it does help and it does add that extra strength. And I'm sure there's scientific studies about this too somewhere that says that is a fact.
Cool. So now, I know like, you've only done a few meets up until this point. Um, first meet, nothing to kind of scoff at. I think, maybe just shy of, 1,200 pounds or something like that. I'm just kind of like looking at some results. I know some of your results, I think, are not, uh, I think we got to merge some of your results, but obviously like, first you had some success early on, and not this meet, but I know the second to last meet, um, you were one lift shy of like hitting an elite total, which so I guess going from like your first meet and then kind of going into now, you start to see you're having some success. You try and maybe want to compete at a higher level. Um, I guess what was it like? I guess first off, we'll kind of go into we'll go into your last meet soon, but I guess what was it like getting on the platform for the first time, and I guess what did that feel like for you?
Platform on the first time, I would say the first squat. It's that same feeling like you're getting in front of a group of people and about to do a presentation. It's kind of like that same feeling. You're going to be nervous, but this is what we train for. You get under that barbell, and then the training just takes over from there. Yes, I was nervous. I think I kind of messed up that squat a little bit. I still hit it, but I know I was wobbling around, maybe lost tightness. But that's why I guess it's great to do a little bit more of a conservative weight on the first attempt. But I hit it, and then after that, it's just game time. Then you're in the zone. The nervousness, it's still going to be there a little bit before the lift, but I feel like that's a good thing. Me personally, I need a little bit of fear going into a lift because it triggers the fight or flight, but it's still go time at that point. After the first squat, it's like you're in the zone, and then like anything could be accomplished at that after that.
So obviously started to have some success early on, and then you came very close to achieving like a big goal, but fell a little short. So I guess from that meet, like obviously you still made progress, but obviously you kind of missed the mark a little bit, but you were very close. What was it like kind of going into this last contest? What was your kind of mindset? Did that kind of help motivate you a little bit more? Did you feel like you needed to dial, what was that kind of like going from like being really close to your goal, kind of missing the mark, and then kind of going into this last meet?
Well, the meet before this one, I knew it was going to take a Hail Mary. And I was really hoping that it was going to happen when I lifted up that I think it was a 573 pound deadlift. once it started moving, I honestly thought I was going to hit it, but then it just got stuck at my knees, and I was just like, ah. And then my latch just gave up on me, and it just brought me right back to the ground. Going into the next meet, this last one that happened where I hit the elite total, I felt a lot more confident. A lot of that was because of the training leading up to it. We were hitting big numbers on the squats. Deadlift seemed to go up to, and the bench even went up a little bit as well. So in my mind, I was just like, okay, I just have to hit the squats. That's it. If I hit the squats, then it's a shoe in. And we didn't quite do that. We missed the third one, but the 470. After I hit that, I remember talking to Maurice. He was there, and I was just like, I think I got this because the 470 puts me in. I can hit a 560 deadlift. I can hit a 320 bench. So we're good. So we can have fun on the third squat and see what happens, you know? So it was really even just that 470 squat.
Yeah, well, so you had I'm glad that that was your like kind of mindset going in, because I was kind of a little bit not that I was worried, but I was kind of like really kind of banking on you getting that like last one. And I think it was just a matter of like maybe, this, not to say the second attempt was great. It was moved really well, still a PR. I think you might have maybe went a little bit too low on the third. So that was kind of like a critical miss. And you and kind of Post had like a similar thing, except you missed a squat, she missed a bench. And it kind of like, not to say like I knew the deadlift was, you were capable of it, but I knew that you were going to have to like hit all your benches at that point. And I knew that, and like I said, all your benches look great, thankfully, which was good. But I knew
Yeah.
that like, it was going to like come down to the wire, and I knew you're going to have to hit all your deadlifts at that point. So going into that like last lift where you knew you needed that like deadlift to secure, what was kind of going through your head at that point?
So before a top lift like that, all the stuff I talked about at the beginning of the top podcast, I actually go through all that in my head. I actually go to that place. It does help me. I know this isn't for everybody. I know some people want to go to a more happy place, but me, I have to actually go into that, for lack of a better word, the dark place. You know, I'm doing a
Yeah.
lot of pacing. I'm sniffing the smelling salts. And then right when the bar is loaded, then it's just go time. I'm not thinking about that stuff anymore. That's just to get me to that hyped up, like angry moment. And then it's just training just takes over from there. And it's just attack the barbell, accelerate through the lift as best as I can, and just keep pulling no matter what. The only way that it will go back down is if it slips out my hands or if it actually drags me back down to the ground. And that's the mindset that I have going into it.
Yeah, I think more than any other lift, the deadlift can be like, I don't know, really mental, to the point where like sometimes I think more than any other lift, you can kind of just like will yourself to like do it. Whereas I feel like with the other lifts, especially bench, squat to an extent too, you kind of just get out of position a little bit, or you go a little bit too low in the squat, and there's not really much you can kind of do to recover at that point. But yeah, I think in the deadlift, especially as long, if you have the grip strength, and if you're really able to like just kind of crack it off the ground, if you're willing to kind of like put yourself, um, you know, in a place where you just like refuse to stop until the lift is done, you could kind of surprise yourself sometimes with like a PR. Um, and I think it was just really cool. I think that like, I don't know how much more you had. I think it was like the perfect number, and luckily, like you had the strength to do it, and it was well prepared, and made me very proud that it was one of probably our best showings of as of the last couple of years as a team. We had three people hit elite totals. You and Alex was your first time hitting elite. Both were big PRs. Ashley also hit a very substantial, like, she added, I think, like over 100 pounds to her total as well. So it's just like a really good showing from like the team. Um, yeah, and I just think it was just like kind of really good. So I think that like what's really important in a situation like this, and you kind of speak to it. I know that you don't know any different, like you only know like you've only been handled, but like not everyone has a coach, not everyone has a handler. So in a situation like that where you did miss your third squat, and things maybe, not that it was a bad result or anything, but obviously you didn't have like a perfect 9 for 9 day, but we still got it done. What is it like having the team there? What is it like having a handler, kind of take you through that process, uh, actually at the meet?
It's a great experience to have that because it lets you just be an athlete. It takes all the thinking out of it. Like I don't have to think about my numbers at all. I just let you do the thinking, and then all I have to do is just perform. And I think you said it best when it comes to that. Like just be an athlete. Sometimes I'll even ask you, "Hey, what's the number I'm going to do next?" And you're like, "Don't worry about it. Just
Yeah.
perform. Just don't look at the weight. Just do everything that you did in training." And that's a mindset that I still need to get better at because I'd always like to know what I'm doing. But still, at the end of the day, it's just getting under the barbell with the squat, the bench, and over the barbell with the deadlift and just performing. Don't worry about the weight. You're not going to pick a number that you don't believe that we can't do, right? So it's just about just hitting the weights at that point.
I think the more you can kind of get out of your own head is going to be good. Not to say like, obviously you care, so you kind of want to know what's going on. But yeah, sometimes some lifters can get really, they might be like afraid of a certain number. They might have struggled getting past a certain milestone. So sometimes it definitely can be helpful to just like focus on just repeat, just be consistent, set up the same way, just execute. And I've always found that really helpful for a lot of people, but it's hard. It's hard to like, you got to get to the point where you trust your handler and trust your coach. But I think if you could do that, it definitely really helps like with your performance and your consistency for sure. So another thing I want to I know you kind of mentioned that you kind of struggled. So I want to talk about two things. I want to give some advice to new lifters, but also before we kind of get into that. So you're like a little bit more on, I don't know if it's rare, but like obviously like someone like myself, I've always been a bigger kid. I've kind of struggled to kind of keep weight off. You're kind of the opposite, where you've really kind of struggled to put size on, to put weight
Yeah.
on. So I just want to maybe talk about, so maybe, there might be some people listening that they might consider themselves a hard gainer. Maybe they kind of were like the skinny kid growing up, or they maybe just kind of struggle to put weight on. Just maybe talk about some of those challenges and maybe some things that you found helpful to help, because obviously you've put a lot of muscle on in the past couple of years. Even though maybe your body weight has not changed too much, I think definitely we can kind of agree that you definitely put some more size on, definitely more muscular for like your frame. So, what are some
Right.
things you've have found helpful for yourself to put muscle on?
I will say this that the beginning of the bulking phase, like when you're just starting off, that's the hardest because I found with myself, I did have to force feed myself a little bit. I had to eat even when I wasn't hungry. I probably could have done a little bit better and had more fatty foods, but I do remember eating a dinner, being full, and then eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dessert afterwards, even though I didn't want to. But I was really trying to bulk up the best that I could. I was able to only last like a couple months though at most, like maybe like 2 months, and then my body started to adjust. I started to actually be a little bit more ravenous. Not skipping breakfast was a big one too. The problem with me though, and I actually still have this problem to this day, I'm still fighting that 125, 130 pound man that's inside of me. I'm still battling it every single day. I'm not hungry for breakfast. I wake up and the first time I really get hungry is around 11, sometimes 12 o'clock. So what I started doing was just making a milkshake, well, protein shake or mass gainer shake, which could get up to like 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 calories in one shot, depending on what you're putting in there, but which brand you get. Um, Mutant Mass was the one that I've been doing lately because I don't have to put anything. It's just already 1,200 calories. And the reason why I do that is because it's just easier to drink the calories in the morning anyway. It's a lot easier to drink the calories than it is to consume it and eat it at that point. But like I said, that definitely gets easier, and then you become more ravenous. And as the appetite gets better and you gain more muscle mass, you're going to have more appetite, and it kind of gets the ball rolling from there. So that's what helped me out, like especially going into like the bulking and trying to gain more muscle mass and just more mass in general.
Yeah, I think if people are listening kind of know a lot of the advice that we give to people that are trying to lose weight, where it's like, don't drink your calories, eat high volume, lower calorie foods, those kind of things can be flipped for the hard gainer. So maybe drink some more calories, try to have more high calorie, more still nutrient dense but higher calorie foods. So maybe, like I said, a little bit. Maybe you don't be afraid to have a fattier piece of steak. Don't be afraid to have a little bit more fat in your ground beef, or add some oils to your meal for to help kind of stimulate the appetite, but also increase the calories a little bit. Don't be afraid to add a little, we kind of talked about maybe a little sugar or a little honey on things, just things to stimulate the appetite. Things like that can go a long way. And things don't need to be like 100% clean all the time when you're bulking. Now you don't want to like eat garbage either, where it upsets your stomach, but you can kind of afford a little bit more junk here and there, just to kind of get those extra calories in within reason.
That's
And
a good point that you make right there too, because I used to watch like all sorts of videos about fitness. and some of them were about weight loss, but I was still watching them because I'm thinking to myself, I just have to do the opposite. If I want to bulk, whatever they're saying, just don't do what they're saying. Do the complete opposite, like flip it, like you said.
Yeah. So I think for people that are kind of listening, and again, it's like, it's not advice that I'm going to, I've never had issues kind of gaining weight. So, and then like anything else too, I think also, I'm not someone that thinks that you need to track all the time, but I think it is a good idea to track here and there just so you get an idea. Cause people are like, oh, I'm eating so much, I'm eating so much. But then when you actually kind of write it down, um, you may not be eating as much as you think. So, everyone's like, oh yeah, no, I eat 10,000 calories. I'm like, you don't know what 10,000 calories actually
Yeah,
actually entail. You know what I mean?
that
So
is true. I forgot to mention that when I did first start bulking, I tracked it and I was like, wow, I'm just not eating enough. And that's where the peanut butter and jellies after dinner came in because I was like, I need to put on more calories.
yeah, and then something like that. So you have like maybe a little treat or something. Like I said, things like nut but. So like again, for someone that's dieting, things like nut butters and nuts are going to be really high in calories. It's still like maybe potentially a healthy food, but a handful of nuts could be like a couple hundred calories or something like that. So things like that can go like a long way. So the other thing I wanted to kind of ask, if maybe you had someone that's listening, maybe they're new to lifting, maybe they're like maybe on the fence of competing. What's some advice or what would you say to people that are kind of just starting out, or maybe some information that you wish that you knew, when you were starting out? I know you mentioned like you might have been going too heavy too often or maxing out too often. What's some advice that you have to the new lifter in mind?
That's a good question. I would say get a coach. Getting a coach is extremely important. Got John Gaglione right here. He'll coach you. But that is super important because that was a game changer for me. The proper programming, not going too heavy too often. And if you really want to compete, there's tons of research out there online if you don't have a coach. But I would say just jump right in. If you really, really want to do it, just do it. Have fun. Don't go too crazy on the first meet. Like that's what we did too. Like we were playing a little bit more conservative. First meet, it's about getting a number. That's it. Just get a number and get a number that you want to beat for the next meet. Uh, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to go right 9 for 9, right? But I guess that would be the goal if you want to have fun. You don't want to miss a lift on your first meet. It's about the experience, getting to learn how the organization of the meet is held, the 3 attempts, like how to play the game, basically. But yeah, I would say just jump right in because I know when I started here, I think I was here for I want to say like 2 3 months before I was just like, okay, I'm jumping in, and then I joined. I think it was the September insurrection 2 years ago. Tried to jump in like right away because I just wanted to get that number, you know.
Yes, a couple of points I want to highlight, and then we'll kind of close out. So, I do agree. Like, I think that a coach is important, but one thing I'm trying to advocate a little bit more, even if it's like potentially like less members or whatever. I think online coaching is great. I think having an online program is great. But I do think that if you could find a crew to train with in person, I think that's like number one, first and foremost. If you can't find people to train with, I think that an online coach is the next best thing. And then obviously an in-person coach, I think is, even better. But if you can find consistent training partners, I think that's going to really be the ticket to like long-term success. And I think that's one of the reasons why, our gym has, been around as long as it has been. And it's why our team continues to still hit elite totals, even though there's a lot more coaches out there. There's a lot more kind of places. When I first started, I was like one of the only kind of, shops in town, so to speak. Now there's a lot more choices, but yet we are still kind of helping create great lifters and great elite totals. And, we're still kind of, putting on great events because of that. So I definitely want to kind of reiterate that. And I do agree too. If you're going to you won't really know if you're going to love it until you try. So just jump in. So you could kind of spend all this time, you could spend years training, and then you could do your first meet. Maybe you're not like really that into it. I would jump into it as long as you could hit the lifts to a contest standard, get the experience. You don't need to necessarily sandbag it, but start with a reasonable, goal in mind, and just try to hit as many lifts as you can and have fun. Um, the other thing I want to say too, I think that we can kind of circle back. Like, Steve had some hardships in his life. You may have some. We all have hardships. We all have kind of hard times. Some of it, we all kind of deal with adversity in some way or the other. So if you can find an outlet so you can advance yourself personally, have personal growth, have some struggle, we call it kind of, some people call it voluntary hard, training with the barbell is a voluntary hardship. It's something you get to do. It's something you choose to do, but that hardship makes you better. It makes you stronger, so, I think that's a really special thing. And then if you could do that with a group and you kind of share that kind of, struggle together, and you kind of build each other up, I think that's a really special thing. So any other closing thoughts before we get off here?
Definitely just want to say stay strong, everybody out there. When it comes to physical, mentally, whatever you're going through, just keep pushing. And yes, you can let it out on that barbell, and it's a great release. I'm definitely an attestament to that. Whenever I go to that barbell, I might be in that one of those moods, but then once I put that barbell down, it's just like all smiles right after that.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks for coming on. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Please check out the links in the description. Give us a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.